Well, welcome everybody to our Zonos webinar. It's a part of our monthly webinar series. My name is Joshua Akins. I am the Chief of Staff at Zonos, and this is my first shot at the monthly webinar. So we kind of round robin a little bit. So if you've watched some of these, you'll see Tani from the sales department, or Samisi, or Jamie, or myself. And in an upcoming webinar, we're going to recap our experience at Geneva. He went to Geneva to get the United Nations, and so he'll talk a bit about experience and kind of what he learned about what's around the globe. Today we have with us, I'm going to advance the slide. There we go. Josh, Chief of Staff. Kelly Stacy, Vice President of Customer Relationships at CGS. And Kelly, why don't you give your boilerplate, your
Sure. Thanks for having me, Josh. Very excited about what you do. And we met when I was in a previous role with a brand called Vicks Swimwear. You and I met, and we were, I'd like to think, early adopters of your solution. And now I'm with CGS, where I have relationships with over 200 of our customers that are in fashion apparel footwear space. So I've been able to expand from one brand to hundreds of brands. Very exciting. I work really closely with the teams, operationally, really liaison with the executives on their various technology projects. So,
what's that? Give a very brief but broad overview of CGS.
So CGS is, I actually am in the application solutions division. Our product is Blue Cherry. It's an end-to-end ERP solution. So we're sort of the soup to nuts for the back office operations for our space, and our core competency is really in fashion apparel footwear. So extremely robust, extremely agile, and our consultants usually came from the apparel side. So we like to think that we understand and we speak brand as well as technology.
Nice, excellent. Okay, so today our hope is to leverage some of your experience specific to when you were running a brand, when you were the top dog and making decisions about how to grow a global strategy for your brand. And so we'll talk about some of the pains and then some of the experiences you had trying to solve that problem. Our goal here is to kind of expose to the viewers and those that come along and watch this this webinar, pains and gains, what you found out, what you learned, short circuit some of their experience so that they can get to a better place more quickly. So to fire things up, the first thing we can talk about is the dauntingness or the fear of the complexity of international and how that hinders every brand as they begin this journey. So speak to that for a moment.
Well, yes, for us, we really wanted to be an international brand. We wanted to sell direct to consumer internationally. And it was a big part of our strategy for growing that space. But it was obviously a big undertaking in our minds. It was, okay, there's the credit card nuance of all of the fraud that takes place. And our finance team said, whoa, we already have enough challenges even domestically dealing with credit cards. So how are we going to even begin to manage that? And so that was one of the bigger hurdles that we had to jump, just getting finance buy-in. And then just in general, understanding sort of the international customer and how to represent our brand online, making the checkout friendly, and, all of the marketing and shipping, the logistics side. So it was very daunting. I mean, we felt the same way when we reached out internationally in wholesale. It was the same thing where we had to really think globally but act locally. So it can be very daunting for brands to go international.
Did you go wholesale first before you tried to go direct?
Yes, we had a very robust wholesale presence, and many of the in Europe, it kind of helped the brand quite a bit. And we've always been sort of an international brand, just organically grew internationally through trade shows, et cetera. Just, the reach of the brand had done that, but we've never directly to the consumer. We hadn't had that, but we knew that we had a desire and a demand coming from international customers, and we had some that would purchase when they were in the United States, and they would have it shipped to their home in Florida, right? Because they just couldn't, they needed to go back with Vicks. So we knew that we had customers asking for the brand, but we just were, again, it was just a big, a big task to get there.
So Vicks, let's mention that Vicks was a swimsuit brand, right? It was a luxury swimsuit item, right?
Swimsuit, we like to think of Vicks as a luxury resort brand. We like to think that the owner and the visionary Paola Hermani kind of brought luxury swim to the United States, and she sort of founded the concept of you go to the beach and it's not just about function, it's about fashion, it's about making a statement. So we had swimwear as well as resort wear, really that beach to street. So we like to think of ourselves as, you're going on vacation, you're packing Vicks.
Gotcha. What was the tipping point that led you to think, all right, that footprint, that global brand is driving enough direct sale demand that we should like firm it up, that we should take the next step?
The truth is we saw it in our organic. We could see the search, some of the organic, metrics were showing that we were getting a lot of, visitors from other countries. So we could kind of see that a little bit in the metrics, and our digital partners were sort of saying, hey, this is a hot pocket for you. We really need to go international. But a little bit of just, we want to grow, and how do we grow outside of the United States, and how do we reach further, into the millions of people out there? So it was honestly a little bit of just, let's open up the market and let's get more of the pie. And we wanted to grow that direct to consumer business. It was an important, business for us. And obviously we were able to speak directly with our consumer versus, wholesale is amazing, but it's not always that direct touch point. You don't always get to choose the experience, et cetera. So it was really it just made sense. We were growing significantly domestically, and we thought, let's just open the gates.
Gotcha. Let's segue then, talking about experience. Wanting to choose the customer's experience and knowing that retail or whole distribution wasn't all that. Mm-hmm. Your first experience, where did you go from there?
I mean, our first experience with shipping with international was to say we're international. I mean, it sounds really crazy, but to be able to say, actually, we can ship a package to Europe, and we're an international brand. And with that came sort of that whole model where we use a third party, and we said, hey, you can do all the heavy lifting. We'll partner with you. We'll use all of your resources, and you can make it super simple for us. So for us, it was a stake in the ground for international, but I found out very quickly just through reviewing monthly, really the numbers and the customer feedback and just the feedback from our e-commerce team, that this wasn't a scalable model, that this wasn't a model to really have the best experience.
It was just a spin up, a very, very early.
It was like a dipping our toe in the water, it was sort of like, okay, we're international, so we can say that, but it was not the experience that we thought it would be. And, it had quite a few shortfalls, and we found that out as we went along. So
we have a term for what we call that group of customer or companies. We call it a GELP because it handles global e-commerce, logistics, and payments. So they're kind of the one button solution where at the end of the day, a visitor comes to your website and then goes away from your website, and they're no longer truly your customer.
Right.
Because now the GELP is buying the swimsuit from you, essentially, and then they're quoting the price, the duties, the taxes, the shipping. They're sending it on their shipper account. They're paying the duties and taxes through their shipper, and then they're keeping. They're actually in control of the price, right? So then they keep whatever they want to keep of that total price, and they remit you the cost of your swimsuit.
Yes. It's definitely, it's definitely a stake in the ground for international, but once you really take a step back and you kind of do the math and you really start to take, sort of just analyze your business, you realize really quickly that it really is just the first step of international. It was great for us because we we've always been the type of brand that says, look, let's learn how to do it, and then we'll internalize it if we can. If it makes sense, let's internalize it. And so this made a lot of sense, to learn the business, realize it's not so scary, understand why we don't want to use this model, but then say, how can we internalize this? So I would say it was a great first step. We also realized some things, just simple things like, we had quality control that was happening at our factory, but knowing that this product was going back across the country, wherever, and it was going to be, we had a few more quality steps that we would take just to ensure. We learned that through the Gelt model, because we had some product that, something, I don't know, even if there's a thread that's not quite right. I mean, it's very small, but we're a luxury product that consumer is saying, look, I'm spending this type of money, I'm waiting this much time, it needs to be perfect. So we learned quite a bit using that model. It gave us a little kind of training wheels.
Talk specifically about the cost of missed shipments when you're trying to be international.
I mean, it's painful because the customer is calling, asking where their shipment is, and we want to, true up that experience as quickly as possible. So there were times when we would just ship out the product in good faith, knowing that we might eat it on that first package that went out and maybe got lost, and we have to wait on our partner to find it, because we just didn't want to compromise that relationship. So we were really about customer goodwill and said, look, we want you to come back. So, there were some painful moments where it was, we don't know where that package is. And there were a lot of positive experiences, but just the loss of visibility and control, it created a bit of a negative customer experience. And our e-commerce, customer support team would come and they would say, is there any way we can change? Can we get off of this model? It is painful. I'm spending so much time chasing international packages. And it's just, and I feel so bad for these customers because they need it. They're going on vacation, So we kind of forced ourselves to say, hey, let's take a hard look at this and let's make a change.
Right. So you were brave now. Like, you got enough of the toe in the water that you're like, all right, it's time to internalize this. The market is real. The opportunity is real. Let's grow to the next level. So what did that look like? And maybe you could even talk about, it sounds like you grew enough to want to change your platform, which also helped you kind of go out and explore and find your next solution.
Yeah. So one of the things we realized as well was that we were on a platform, and I won't name the platform just because, and it really was more about our business and how our business ran. But it was a platform that required quite a bit of development to make any small changes. And it really kind of handcuffed us to be as agile as we needed to be. And so we made the decision to move to Shopify Plus, and that was a move toward agility and toward being able to say, look, let's internalize more of this business, and let's be able to move with the market quicker. So we did that, and it was an excellent experience. And while we were in the process of planning that relaunch, we said, okay, let's also change how we manage international. And I think that's about the time that, believe it or not, my UPS partner brought in some opportunities, and he kind of shared the iGlobal solution. It was called iGlobal back then. And he shared that solution with us and said, hey, this is a way for you to internalize some of this international. And it was so smart and so simple, and it kind of covered all of the risks that we need, but it allowed us to own the supply chain, that I said, this is too good to be true. But we made the decision that we were going to be bullish, and we were going to go live with international when we re-platformed to Shopify Plus. So that's what we did.
So the first thing was the experience of, like, I know, because we talk to customers all the time, there's a tremendous amount of fear over integrating something new, especially when you're already starting a whole new platform. Right. Like, integration is often a real sticking point because not everybody does it right. Like everybody's got a war story about an integration gone wrong, promises made and not kept. So what was your experience there, or what were you worried about?
Well, I was very cautious because I'd been involved in so many technology projects, and I know integration can be a dicey area because it's not just about the solution that you're integrating or the solution that you're integrating to. It's that third-party relationship of everybody's pointing at everyone else saying, it's your side, it's my side. And I didn't want to be caught in that. So we did quite a bit of due diligence, and I think a lot of calls with Zonos, and I was iGlobal then, but Zonos. And we were like, are you sure? Is this going to work? Is this going to be simple? We cannot risk go live. We had a plan B that if we couldn't go live with international, we would hold off on international, go live with our site, resolve the Black Friday because we were literally going live weeks before Black Friday, and then revisit international. But the reality was, even our development partner on the Shopify side said, hey, there's risks. This is an integration. They hadn't worked with your solution yet. And they were even sort of, whoa, but they came back saying that was the easiest integration we've ever had. They were blown away. And so was I. And I was happy because you kept your promise. But we were able to true up the integration, but then also in the warehouse, resolve, UPS came to the table and said, here's how you're going to ship your packages. One label, very simple. It was very, very easy. And we were able to go live on time. So it's a shocking story because I've never seen it in any other technology. There's always some nuance that you didn't account for, but it really, and we even had some changes. I don't know if you remember this with our currency and how we calculated our currency as far as just how we calculated our price, our retail price, because we had wholesale business and we wanted to make sure that we weren't competing.
Oh yeah,
Do you remember?
Yeah, there was an additional percentage, right?
Yes, we had some. So we wanted to make sure we weren't competing with our Canadian business, our European business. So we had some fun, but that was simple. We were able to get closer to having a fair business online. We didn't want to have that issue. So there were some fun things that we did in a very, very tight timeline. So
if my memory serves, some of the things that we did with you, we did via some rules that we had to write, but now we've internalized those into the back end, and those controls are now standard. So someone that comes on can go in the back end and they can adjust I think it's by country zone. They can adjust like markups and things like that. I know they can do it with duties and taxes and with the shipping, but maybe even with the currency conversion on the price. So yeah, we probably learned from you some things that retailers were going to want and integrated into the product.
It's important because, the consumer sees, the whole ecosystem. So they know what your price is on Shopbop, what your price is on Net-a-Porter, what your price is on your website. And they want to ensure that it's fair. So you provided a tool that we were able to really, kind of just ensure that was made sense for our customers. And so, and I think previously with the Gelt model, it was a fast calculation, so you could never really nail it. So
I know you also took advantage of some fraud protection tools. Talk about how that, how your finance department, I guess, felt about that.
I think for them, it was just being able to understand what the levers were and know that we were able to, because we had quite a few gates up. I mean, it was getting to a point when we had, even domestically, it was difficult for us to control some of the fraud. And we had some pretty large orders domestically. Sometimes, if you can imagine a $5,000 order online, it would happen. And then there'd be, and that's just dealing with US customers. So knowing that we had a partner that could really help us manage that risk. And then in the end, obviously, I think we even took advantage of your capturing of that revenue. So I think we took that off the plate, which I was fine with, because I said, they're going to do a better job than we are. But it was very seamless for us to do that. So, I think that's one of the biggest risks is the credit card side, and being able to deal with the fraud, and also being a trustworthy partner for the consumer, right? They want to know that you have all those protections up as well. So,
yeah, since we were working together before, and you were an early adopter there as well, we've kind of moved towards that model of providing, instead of trying to be integrated to any and all payment options, we're actually the Zonos payment option with the fraud protection is basically the base model now. It's plug and play. It's really easy. The big differentiator is that it's in the currency of the foreign purchaser. It posts to their bank account in the number they saw on the screen. So there's no surprises.
Right.
There's there's no conversion on their end. What they saw is what they get. And then we repatriate the money and pay the customer in US dollars, or, you know, in whatever they're asking for. So
that's huge. That's huge because they need to feel that it's a local experience, right? That and I think that was something we didn't have in the past, and there was always that question. I just think that you know, that's bigger than you think. Being able for them to see that, oh, I bought in pounds, and I can see that it's in pounds and it's super clear in black and white for that consumer. So
yeah, that's a big deal. So I didn't mention, for those that are participating, if anybody had a question at any point throughout this, or just wanted to throw something out there to have Kelly address, we'll look at those at the end if there are any. I just didn't mention that at the beginning. But let's move on to other considerations. We've talked a little bit about platform and integration, but let's talk about being international ready. Like what do you think international ready could look like for people that are in? Just talk about your CGS clients. You know what I mean? The shoes, that group of people. Where do they have to get to when you see them and say, all right, it's time to now introduce you to a Zonos, or maybe it's time for you to get to a Gelt?
I mean, I think there's all of the technology. You know, you need to make sure that you're ready with the right solution, the right back-end operations, that you can manage the international business. I also think just your brand needs to be ready, because I think that your quality needs to be there, your fit needs to be there. I mean, it sounds really simple, but that's just going to minimize the returns. And I think that if you have a presence in the countries that you're going international in, it's always better, because your consumer has potentially touched and felt your product. Again, we're talking about apparel, that's where I come from, but the fit is there. And so they know, oh, if I buy a size small, this is what this means. And I think that it's riskier when you don't know your customer, you know, your own customer. I think VIX was in a very, you know, their position was our customers knew us, and they knew their style, they knew their size, they knew their cut, and we were sort of like the fitted tee from James Pierce, you know. So you just know what you're getting, and I think it makes a significant difference in your ability to go international.
Gotcha. So how do you get there from here then? What would you suggest people do to get to that level? I mean, is it just an unrelenting focus on your customer, even if you don't have a lot there right now?
I think you know if you're ready as a brand, if you're having great sell-through in the channels that you're in, if you understand your product assortment, if you understand your customer and your brand and the experience you're driving. I think you know if you're ready. You know that there's, you know, I always used to say to the owner, beautiful is international. It's not a word that means one thing in one country and one thing in another. If you have a great product, I think it has no boundaries. So I think there's, you know, understanding the ticketing and the pricing, and again, you know, your quality, and making sure that you're ready for returns. You know, the returns happen even here, because we have a customer that likes to try clothes on through direct to consumer, and she uses her, you know, her bedroom as a dressing room. So there's a certain amount of that you need to be able to stomach. And then you also need to put your hat on and say, I'm willing to go as far as I need to hold this customer and to keep this customer. And so sometimes that means more concessions and a little heavier on the service, and making sure that you're taking responsibility for, you know, any experience that might not be positive for some reason. So it's, you know, it's honestly, the world is so flat right now. I feel like everything's so accessible. It's not like it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, where it was like international. Oh my gosh. I mean, the customer is so exposed. You know, Shopbop went there before all of us, and they've kind of paved the way. So I use Shopbop just because they went there, and they went there with 2-day shipping, and they went there and said, we're going to go there. And they made the customer feel as though she, you know, had the same benefits of buying in the US. So, you know, it's a risk, but I think if your product's ready, your brand's ready, and then if you work with the right partner who can also tighten up all of the back end operations, you know, you have to respect the supply chain. I think sometimes that's left off the table, but that's a really important piece.
Yeah, we talked earlier a little bit about you're needing to control the supply chain, because that really, like, maybe like you just said, could be it is certainly the missed piece in the customer experience conversation, right? Like you can talk all day about how much you're going to take care of your customers, but then if there's a rub somewhere in the fulfillment side, everything falls apart.
No, for sure. I mean, I think the intention, Vix was built as a brand that was about the experience and about the brand and about the quality of the product. And so packaging was always a really big thing for us. When we went to the Gelt model, we made a lot of hard decisions about packaging because of the costs that were involved. And I felt we didn't put our best foot forward the first pass because we had to make those concessions. We had to say, okay, well, there's a cost and they don't want to touch the package this much. And so there was all of these touches that we internalized, and that was part of who we were. So, I think just in general, you have to stand true and realize that it's very competitive, direct to consumer. And while packaging is an important piece of cost, because you want to make sure that, shipping's a big thing, and there's all the, you need to be responsible with your packaging, you still need to also provide a reason for the consumer to come directly to you for that product. So it needs to have some level of touch that feels different and special,
Gotcha. I got another question. Where do you see the global e-commerce market heading today? Like, what are the trends that you're maybe tracking or preparing for?
That's a loaded question. I mean, we see no barriers to entry, less barriers to entry. I think Amazon's a big part of that. It's a big part of what I hear in my world with CGS, Amazon direct to consumer. We just had our Insight conference. It was a digital conference. It was about being digitally connected. And every one of our customers said that is really their focus. It's all about the direct to consumer business and managing the Amazon business. And because I think that's because the department store business has changed so much. And I think that there's creativity of crossing the barriers and saying, let's leverage this direct to consumer model as much as possible. So I think it's going to continue to flex and change. I think platforms like Shopify Plus have leveled the playing field for brands that aren't necessarily big, but they're able to act like very big brands and flex with the market. I think that's a pretty cool thing, because it used to kind of be you're either in that big enterprise, leverage your whole business, platform, or you're trying to figure it out, but you get a Shopify Plus and they kind of came in and said, everybody's got a shot at this. And I think that's pretty cool, Yeah.
Are they seeing Amazon as the frenemy sort of model where they use it to get exposure and to get out there, but at the same time, they're also concerned about building their direct channels to their customers?
Yeah, I think Amazon became something that no one could have ever predicted. I think there was this sort of, you're there whether you want to be there because of the marketplace, and that sort of got out of control. And I think a lot of brands didn't really get their arms around it until it was too late. And they said, wow, we're there even if we don't want to be there. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a hard and fast answer to this, but I hear just sort of a more strategic approach to dealing with Amazon and saying, look, it's important to be there because, there's a big customer, a lot of customers there, but there's also this sort of, how do we do it and how do we decide what we are going to sell on Amazon? And then there are businesses that's their business is Amazon. I mean, I just think it's just, it got a free pass, right? Because it used to be in luxury that you were judged by the door you sold to. And Amazon, for some reason, is just it's just a safe door for most brands to go through without judgment. It's kind of a strange, they've just kind of figured it out. So I do think it's still something that, brands have to be cognizant of and not, and control, so if you have a brand with breadth, then you kind of want to think, do I want it all up there? Or do I want to kind of have a, sort of my classics and my never out of stocks, et cetera? Do I want to give them all of the first to market? Do I want to save that for in my boutiques and my specialty stores, et cetera? So there's some strategy for brand managers there.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for sharing. We are up against our closeout time, but I'm so grateful for your time to jump on with us, and hopefully some of what we were able to share today speaks to brands that are trying to get some of those questions answered and just trying to figure out where they are on that compendium of growing internationally.
Thanks for having me, Josh, and best of luck.
Appreciate it. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.